Hey guys, Zach Carson here. Today we're going to be discussing some of the compensations that you may notice in the overhead squat assessment, and more particularly we're going to focus on the toe turning out. So just a quick demonstration of what that looks like with the overhead squat assessment. Hands come up overhead, we squat down, and we try to focus on those toes staying forward. And if we notice the compensation of the toes coming out, then we want to focus on some of those things that might be causing that. Generally, it's caused by overactive and underactive muscles. In this case, the overactive muscles are going to be a little bit more lateral. Overactive, looking at the gastroc and the soleus, and the lateral hamstring, which is going to be the biceps femoris. And then underactive muscles, we want to strengthen those muscles. Those are usually going to be the more medial muscles of the thigh, and also a little bit more of the medial gastroc, and some of the muscles in the ankle as well. So what we do in this case is we take 4 phases. We want to inhibit, we want to lengthen, and we want to activate, and then we want to integrate. Kind of full circle in which we can take 4 stages and help to either strengthen those muscles or kind of stretch them out if they're a little overactive. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to inhibit, and we're going to do that via SMR or self-myofascial release. And we're going to focus on the gastrocnemius. So for this demonstration, we're going to talk about the foam roller. And with the foam roller, all we're going to do is we're going to sit down on the floor. We're going to place that foam roller right under our gastroc. Again, the overactive muscle is going to be a little bit more lateral, but we can focus kind of on both sides of the leg. But we want to make sure that we are rolling. Depending on your tolerance level for that tissue, you want to make sure you're rolling kind of the full length of that gastroc, all the way from the proximal attachment down to the distal attachment, where it actually kind of blends into the soleus and then into the Achilles tendon. So we want to focus on rolling kind of the whole length of that muscle, and then we can also add a little bit of pressure by taking the opposite leg and placing it over top of that leg. That adds a little bit of weight for depending on your tolerance of that tissue. And then you can also lift up, pushing your hands into the ground and picking your butt up and kind of rolling down the length of that gastroc. Now, if you find a really tender spot, that's a good time to stop and just kind of introduce that pressure and then maybe release it a little bit and slowly work through that area, vice rolling the entire length of the gastroc. So focus on those tender areas by pinpointing them, stopping, maybe moving the leg a little bit side to side, a little bit forward to back, and try to release that tension to the best that you possibly can. So that's the inhibit phase. For the lengthen phase, we're going to focus a little bit more on the soleus. So with the gastroc and the soleus, find a wall, or in my case I have my squat rack or my bar, that we want to just go ahead and place our hands against the wall, introduce some pressure against that wall. And then for the soleus, we want to actually bend at the knee to take that tension out of the proximal end of the gastroc, because it does cross the knee. If we bend the knee, it releases that gastroc and focuses more on the more distal soleus. So we want to actually drive pressure through that heel, making sure that we're feeling that stretch all the way down and through that soleus, vice having the knee locked out, where we're focusing a little bit more on the gastroc. So coming down through, pressing down into the ground, trying to introduce that stretch into the soleus, looking at about 30 seconds per stretch on that one as well. So focus on staying nice and straight and driving that heel straight into the ground. The third thing we want to do is activate that muscle. So what we're going to do here is grab yourself an exercise band, a stretch band, a TheraBand, anything, a towel that you can get your hands on. Go ahead and assume that sitting position again. And we're going to work on resisted plantar flexion, so that way we're really activating that gastroc and soleus complex. So you take the band, simply place it around the toe, create as much pressure as needed, and we're simply just going to take that and we're going to press down and through, slow and controlled. We're not bouncing back and forth by any means. slow and controlled, kind of driving into that contraction, holding it for a slight second at the top end, and then slow and controlled on the opposite direction, eccentric portion as well. So again, pressing through, and then returning back, all the way back, just as such. And then the last phase is integration. With integration, we're taking the muscle groups and we're trying to strengthen them through integration of movement, more of a global pattern, vice a local pattern that we looked at in inhibitory, lengthening, and activation. So integration, we're going to talk about the single leg deadlift. So with the single leg deadlift, we just pick one foot or the other to start on. We remove the pressure off of the other foot. We're going to focus on a couple of things here. One is we want to keep those hips balanced. We don't want to fall laterally one way or the other and let our knee drive in or let our knee drive out. We want to try to keep that knee slightly over the toe. You'll also notice that I have a soft knee right here, and I'll go into a lateral view here shortly to focus on that. But we really want to focus on taking our body and moving it in the downward motion, slowly, 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 getting as close to that toe as possible, and then coming back up. So that's really going to focus on those balance, or that balance through that ankle complex, through that knee complex, and through that hip complex, hitting the lateral and medial muscles really all the way up through the leg. So again, knee is nice and soft, kind of over the toe. We also want to focus on a couple of other things here. Coming to the lateral view to show a couple of other aspects. Again, you'll notice that knee is soft, it is not locked out. We want to go all the way down. And return slow and steady through the entire tempo of the exercise. So also notice the back was nice and straight. I was not overly bent over through any of the lumbar or thoracic spine areas. If you notice here, we go down, back is nice and straight. The hips kind of open up when I clear that leg out behind me. I'm not dragging my foot back. I want to get it nice and crisp out behind me to make sure those hips clear. And I also want to toe touch if I need to. So if I do lose balance, you want to progress this with a toe touch. So you can slowly toe touch and reach back, but when you feel comfortable, that's when you bring that toe up and come through. A couple of other things you can do here. Simply add a weight to one hand or the other. So right hand, right foot, coming down through that deadlift. You can do left hand, left foot, left hand, right foot, coming down through that deadlift. You can also hold a weight in both hands coming through that single leg deadlift. Or introduce the barbell as well. All are going to just add progression and resistance to that integrative exercise. So those are a couple of things that I wanted to talk about today. Just with that overhead squat, the toe turns out. Again, we want to inhibit, lengthen, activate, and integrate, focusing on that gastroc, the soleus, maybe that lateral hamstring, the biceps femoris, and then just integrating it throughout the leg by hitting all those stabilizers and balancing muscles. Thank you.